So I recently just got back from the Crohn's and Colitis Congress Conference in Las Vegas as one of the IBD patient reporters. And so if you're not familiar with what that is or what the Congress is, the conference is, it's like the premier conference in inflammatory bowel disease. So this is a conference dedicated to Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, and it brings together some of the leading physicians, researchers, nurses, dietitians, clinical psychologists, all these people involved in treating inflammatory bowel disease and also doing research on inflammatory bowel disease as well. So it brings everybody together, talk about the latest research, the latest clinical updates, all of these things related to IBD and treatments and all kinds of information. It was an incredible conference, and it was something that left me feeling hopeful for the future of inflammatory bowel disease. So I've shared a lot on TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, some of short form videos, but I want to share a little bit of a longer in-depth video of kind of what I learned from the conference, what we did in terms of content and how we kind of reported on it, and some of the things that you should know, and hopefully leave you feeling with that sense of hope that I also left with. So I was invited to Las Vegas with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation with my really good friend Maggie. Maggie Tretton, she goes, "Let's talk IBD." She is somebody I've known for a really long time. We started our patient advocacy journeys around the same time, like 2010, and we met very soon after that, kind of online. And then a couple of years ago, we had an opportunity to go to an event together and speak and be on a panel. And when we met in person, it just kind of felt like we had literally known each other the amount of time that we had, even though we never met in person. It just felt normal, felt like we were just great friends. And so it was really cool to be able to have her as well as the other IBD patient reporter there. I think that we made a really good team, and we tackled the information as best we could, and I really enjoyed it. She's incredible. Her story is amazing. And so a little different, why were there two of us there? So this was the first year that they brought two patient reporters in for the conference. I think they had one previously, but this year they made a decision to bring two. And so what happened is that Maggie is a nurse, nurse by training. She has her nursing degree and worked as a GI nurse for several years. And then I have a background in biomedical research. I have a master's in biomedical research, so I'm more on the basic science. So that's what they did, actually. So they split us. They put Maggie on kind of the clinical track, and I get to be on the basic science track. So what this did was allow us to split our sessions and bring more information to the community. So it wasn't just one of us trying to split our time between all these different sessions. There were still a ton of sessions for us to go to, even separately, and some of our sessions kind of overlapped because, as you may or may not know, is that the basic science, which is the lab, the research, the people who are at the bench and doing all the animal research and animal models, there is a intersection of basic science to clinical, translational medicine, all of that. So we did have a few sessions together, and a lot of our things that we kind of talked about together were ones that overlapped. And so they split us up. And honestly, I think it was a really good idea because, again, it allows her to bring information from the clinical side. I can bring some of the research as well. And then that gives a really good view of what all is actually happening within the inflammatory bowel disease space in terms of research and clinical updates. So we made a really good pair. And I think that if you've seen any of the other videos that we've done, you've seen some of us, the ones that we've done together. And we had a really good time. We're very good friends. And I was very happy that they paired us up together. And so what did we do, and what all did we learn? So a lot. There's a couple of videos where we've talked about just kind of being overwhelmed with the information, and in a good way. I mean, it was a lot of information, and in my opinion, in our opinion, that's a really good thing, because that means there's so much work going on to help IBD patients, to help us continue to understand the disease, to help us understand what is going on. And then to know that there's all these updates, even from a clinical standpoint, where they're updating the guidelines and how they treat the disease and things that they do. So the information and everything going into it, the money going into it, some of the greatest, scientists, physicians, nurses, all these people are really trying to change the course of how inflammatory bowel disease is treated and how it's thought of. And then to see all of the new drugs and everything that's coming out. It's just really amazing. And I was diagnosed in 2009, and back then we only had a couple of treatments in terms of like biologics, and we had some oral medication, but a couple of biologics, and that was really it. Since then, the treatments have exploded. There are so many different treatments now out there, injections to oral pills to medications that used to be only infusion are now can be given via injection, and so much more on the horizon. It's pretty wild. And I've referenced this a few times. Like, there was a session that I was in about treating pediatric ulcerative colitis, and the presenter said the guidelines from even 5 years ago are no longer completely up to date because of how rapidly everything's changing, from the new treatments that have been approved over the last 5 years to some of the clinical updates and how they treat the disease in the clinical setting as well has updated. And that honestly was something that like I knew and kind of grasped, that I know of so much that has changed, but to hear that even in just 5 years time that there's been so much happen that they have to update their guidelines is honestly really really exciting, and it gives me hope, like I said, for the future. And that's what I took away from this conference. So we had a lot to do. We went to our sessions, we recorded, and we talked to so many people, so many physicians and nurses and dietitians, and we had a really good time. And we we're thankful for obviously the opportunity, but to be able to be able to be a patient at a medical conference like that, and to be there to take in the information and do our best to share it and give it back to the community in a way that makes sense, in a way that's digestible to everybody, and making sure that the patient community has access to some of the latest information in treating and treating inflammatory bowel disease, and some of the new treatments that are being worked on and coming out, I think is really incredible, and kind of gives us we've come so far in that regard to be able to have patients at these conferences, and that in that setting as a reporter, and reporting on that information for the conference. But I also think that it's very important to have patients in these settings. Obviously the physicians, the researchers, all of these people are there to learn and share their research, but you want them to make sure that the patient is still at kind of the front of their mind. And I will say that is very true for all of these people. The patient was something that I talked about a lot in terms of why they do what they do and the research that they do, but to be able to have patients there too, to represent the patient community, I think is extremely important. And not only that, I feel like there are times when this information kind of goes out and goes over a lot of people's heads, and it's not given to the community in a way that makes sense. And that's just how this stuff works. That's how the science and the stuff advances, and the clinical stuff kind of gets out. So to have patients there like Maggie and myself, where we can do our best and have like the knowledge of, at least enough knowledge to know the patient community is going to really be able to kind of grasp this, or it makes a little more sense this way, and to just get it in our own, like how we would want to hear it, I think is really cool. And so again, I believe patients should be involved in all aspects of anything, like medical conferences and treatment decisions and advisory boards. Like, I think patients deserve to have a seat at the table where decisions are being made about patients, and where patients are being talked about. That's one part of why I do patient advocacy. And so to be able to be at this conference and to represent the patient community with my good friend Maggie, who is also a patient, was really incredible. And I've been to a lot of conferences related to inflammatory bowel disease, and been there for other things, and not directly to report on a conference like this, but this was one of the best experiences I've had, and one that really left me again inspired and hopeful and thankful for what is happening, for what is coming. And so there were a lot of things that we learned about. There were a lot of things that we have shared with the community, and I think one of the big takeaways for me, and I've alluded to it and said it, is that there's so much happening in the world of IBD for patients. There's so much research. There's a lot of treatments, currently being tested, some that, hopefully will be approved soon. And there's people who are really just digging into to continue to figure out inflammatory bowel disease and better ways to treat it. And there's some of the smartest people in the world working on this, and that should give everybody hope. You know, the basic science track that I was on is where we get into the really deep dives of the science behind inflammatory bowel disease and trying to continue to uncover things that we don't know. So a lot of the sessions I went to where there was gut microbiome, where we're now, obviously we've known for a long time, even when I was doing my master's, worked with gut bacteria. So now there's a lot that we understand about the composition of the gut microbiome and how that relates to inflammatory bowel disease. And now we're getting into some of the really nitty gritty details of that, like what I posted about this, you know, what the bacteria are doing, what kind of molecules are they making, how do we use that. And then there's other research sessions that I sat on that were just about a whole 2 to 3 hours just on cells that are in the intestine that are currently being researched related to IBD, and just like a very deep dive into cellular immunology in the gut related to inflammatory bowel disease, and that is continuing to progress. And so to be in on that and to know and to see what I was able to see and hear, all of that just was really inspiring. And I know that from the clinical updates that I've seen from Maggie posting and from the things that I was able to kind of get from the clinical side at the conference, it's just a lot of good work, a lot of good people, smart people, physicians, scientists, you know, nurses, PAs, dietitians, psychologists that are really out there trying to change the game that we call treating inflammatory bowel disease for the better for patients. And I think that my big takeaway is that there's so much happening. The guidelines are constantly changing. There's new treatments coming out like every year, it seems, at this point. And so that gives us more options and hopefully puts us more towards a cure. And so I leave you with that I hope that you are inspired for the good about, you know, the changes and everything that's happening with inflammatory bowel disease. I hope that you're hopeful, because you should be, because there's so much happening and so much going on that, you know, we're getting closer, we're learning more, we know more than we ever have about inflammatory bowel disease, and there's still a lot to uncover and a lot to know and to find out. But it is happening, and it is happening at a rapid pace, and obviously everybody wants, you know, we hope to one day get to a cure, but until then, to be able to hone in and treat the disease better and better every single day, and to get more treatments that really target different things, is going to help so many patients. And I think that is incredible and inspiring. And so, but everything's not over. So on February 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, there's the IBD Insider virtual program. It's for patients, so it's geared for patients, for the patient community. And you will get to hear from the experts, a couple of experts, some of the physicians that were at Congress, and some of the information that they presented. And Maggie and myself will be on there, and Maggie will be moderating some of the Q&A stuff. We get to give our input. We get to talk about our experience a little bit of the conference. And then again, you get to hear from the clinicians that presented at the conference, a couple of them, so that you can be more informed and get more information and get some of that more deeper information from the conference from the experts that are treating it. So it's a really good program. The link is in my bio and in the description. So I hope that you register. I think that it will leave you even more inspired about where the future of treating inflammatory bowel disease is going. So thank you to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation for having me. Thank you to Maggie for being an incredible partner at the conference, and you know, she did a lot of pictures for me and stuff, and we made videos together, and I was genuinely inspired by the work that she does and continues to do. And so she was an incredible partner, so thank you. And thank you all for listening. I do hope that you feel hopeful and are inspired about the future of where treating inflammatory bowel disease is going. I still have a lot of information I need to get out, but I do hope that you feel good about where it's going. I hope that you will join us on February the 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.